Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
And now, Brandon, we're going to move on into our final topic, and it's funny that I mentioned my Fighting Illini and kind of throwing a jab at Arizona fans out there, because now we get to talk about a team that Ricky doesn't like too much, that Ricky hates because he's an Illinois fan, and they're one of our biggest rivals in Northwestern. But we're talking about the Northwestern Wildcats, and Brandon, I'm going to throw it to you like I do all the time. I don't know why I keep saying I'm going to throw it to you. Everyone knows I'm throwing it over to you. But right now, the Wildcats and Joe Lunardi's bracketology are an 8th seed. I'm going to throw this at you. What will it take? What is it going to take for you to put the Wildcats in the NCAA tournament with them already being an 8th seed right now?
Probably some good wins down the stretch. That's what it would take for me. I mean, they've beaten some teams already, but they haven't beaten Purdue. They haven't beaten Wisconsin. They haven't beaten Maryland. They haven't beaten these teams that in the Big Ten are really good. So I think that once they're able to win some games like that, that's when I'm going to be able to look at them and go, you know what? This team is really going to be pretty good and has a chance to go somewhere in the tournament. But until they're able to do that, I think that you still have to be a little weary. You have to be a little weary. I think that you can have a lot of excitement. As a Northwestern fan, I'm really excited. Football was just good for us, and now basketball could be too. And that must mean it is one hell of a year, because Northwestern basketball has never made it to the tournament, the only team that hasn't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was how crazy
one of the
is that?
One of the articles I was looking at on ESPN, they even said, they're like, you know what? This Northwestern Wildcat team is trying to do something very similar to the Chicago Cubs, where with the Cubs it was, we've never won a World Series before, or we haven't won one in 108 years. Basically, in the modern ball era, have never won a World Series. Well, this team has never gone to a NCAA tournament. And right now, if I look at their resume, you see a team with about 60.31 RPI, finally got it out, 53.67 strength of schedule. So the RPI is strong at above 60. To me, that 53 is a little bit under, and that's where what you were kind of showing at. The schedule's a little bit weak right now. But don't worry, you get to play that Purdue team twice. You play Wisconsin once, and you also play a ranked Maryland team one time this season.
Wisconsin, Maryland, back-to-back.
Yeah, Wisconsin, Maryland, back-to-back. Wisconsin and Madison. Purdue, you get them both home and away, but you do get to play Purdue on the road, which is key, because to me, yeah, win your home games, but if you lose to Maryland at home, that doesn't sting to me. A close loss to Maryland at home doesn't sting. But if you go in and win in Purdue, that's a good win. Like me, I take more ownership in some good road wins rather than some close home losses. And looking at their record against the top 50, it ain't the best. 2-4. Their losses, though, a 2-point loss to Butler, who was 4 at the time, a 4-point loss to Minnesota, a 4-point loss by the same score, 70-66, to Notre Dame on a neutral court. The Butler one was in Butler, by the way.
And really quickly,
and then Michigan State.
Going to Notre Dame is that this is a Notre Dame team that at the time was not ranked. This Notre Dame team right now, this Notre Dame team is ranked, and they're playing very well. So to only lose to them by 4, that's pretty good. So you hung right with them.
And Michigan State was their biggest one at about 9 points.
And then at the time, too, you played a Texas team that was ranked 22. You beat them 77-58. You crushed them. So I think that this Northwestern team has been pretty good. They've been pretty good to start the season, but I think that right now, the rest of the games, the rest of their schedule, this is where it gets down to the meat and potatoes, and it's going to be a
meat and potatoes.
Yes, it's going to be a very fun ride for them. It's going to be tough, but I think that if they're able to play well here, they could possibly bump up their seed spot in bracketology and be able to get themselves a nice seed in the tournament. But right now, I just do not see this Northwestern team just crumbling and falling out of the tournament and just not going at all. I just don't see that happening. I don't. I bet they split with Purdue, and I bet you they split the games with Wisconsin, Maryland. I bet you they win one of those.
So you're saying let's say this. So let's put it on for the sake of argument. They lose at Purdue, win at home. So there's your split. They lose at Madison, win at home against Maryland. So
I'm not saying that exactly. They may be, but
that's what I'm thinking. If it's going to be 2-2, those would probably be the games.
Or I'm saying they lose to Maryland, win at Wisconsin. I mean, either way,
either or. But the thing that I think also needs to happen, the teams like Nebraska, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Rutgers, you can't have any losses. Can't have any losses to those teams. If you're going to lose, you have to lose to. You got to get to me. 2-2 is the worst that you can do in those ranked games. Basically being the 2 against Purdue, Wisconsin, and Maryland. Because if you go 0-4 in those games, then you're looking at, what were they? Then you're looking at a 2-8 record against the top 50. Then you're sitting there praying. You're sitting there praying on the bubble. And nobody likes, living on a prayer is a different story. New England loves singing that at the AFC Championship game, but living on the bubble is a much harder life for college basketball teams. And for me, I'm going to agree with you. I think they go 2-2. I'm going to say the one I said. Lose at Purdue, win at home, senior night or senior day. Then you win the home game against Maryland, lose at Wisconsin. However, the stretch I'm looking at, February 21st, February 25th, March 1st. That's a Tuesday, a Saturday, and a Wednesday. You've got 2 road games and a key home game. You've got Illinois on the road at the State Farm Center. Then you go to Indiana, play Indiana at Assembly Hall, and then you come back to Northwestern, come back to Evanston to play the Michigan Wolverines. And Indiana is going to be interesting to me the rest of this year because on the fast break this week, and you guys can actually check this out on the mostvaluablepodcast.com or on the YouTube page, Sean, David, myself talked about more toward the draft side, but we talked about the injury to OG Anunoby. And the big thing that we looked at the draft, but looking at Indiana, that's going to affect them the rest of the way. So that Indiana game, maybe with Anunoby's injury, you maybe could give an edge over to the Wildcats. However, when we get to that late season, I'm looking at Illinois, I'm looking at Indiana, I'm looking at Michigan. Brandon, what are all 3 of those teams probably going to have in common when we get to that part of the season? They're all going to be fighting for tournament spots. And it might be where Northwestern's in the bracket and losses could push them out of it. But these teams are basically saying, hey, you know what? This team's in the tournament. We got to beat them because that'd be a quality win for us. So that's the stretch that I think, of course, the ranked games are right here, but right underneath it is that stretch with Illinois, Indiana, and of course Michigan.
Yeah, I think that again, Northwestern just has to play at the consistent pace that they've kind of played so far. They've come out to a 16-4 overall record, 5-2 in the conference. They have been a team that has been pretty consistent, and I think this far into the season, I think that people were probably big-time doubters around Christmas time when they're like, they're doing okay, but we know they'll fall off. Now we're past that. We're past the new year. We're weeks in. Mm-hmm. January's coming to a close. I think that the doubters certainly have to be going, maybe we should shut up because Northwestern is looking pretty good. I'm not saying that they're going to go on this tear and win both games against Purdue, win on the road in Wisconsin, and beat Maryland at home. But I am saying that I think this team right now, where they're at and how they've played, that certainly could show you where they're going to end up going. And I certainly think that this team stays within the top 4 in the Big Ten for the rest of the season.
Well, and the one thing that I also look at this schedule, first off, all of the losses, 3 of the 4 losses that Northwestern has, 3 of them happened away from Evanston. You had a neutral site game against the Fighting Irish, where that was the 4-point loss. You lose at Butler, you lose at Michigan State. The only home loss you have is when Minnesota came to town and beat you 70-66. That being said, a good thing about this remaining schedule for the Wildcats, 7 of the 11 remaining games for the Wildcats are at home. The only road games you have, Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. Those are the only ones. The rest of them are at home. So to me, that bodes well for the Northwestern Wildcats because, like I said, teams are usually going to play stronger at home than they are on the road. And the one thing that I want to throw your way is there's an article on ESPN by John Gassaway, and I'm going to put this down in the comment section for you guys so you guys can look at it too and have the same reference that me and Brandon have. There's one point in his article where he mentions 3 things of what will it take for Northwestern to be a tournament team. And he says, and I quote, that Northwestern's losses are relatively speaking excellent. Do you agree, disagree with that? There are 4 losses of Butler, Notre Dame, the Minnesota, and then the 9-point loss at Michigan State. Are those excellent losses?
The loss to Butler, absolutely. I mean, some of these other teams that we've talked about that are, ranked teams right now have lost to Butler or played a very close game with
Butler's
Butler.
Been a strong team.
Notre Dame, I already said that one. That's a really good loss. It was almost a win. Michigan State, 61-52. That's still pretty darn good. Minnesota, I'd say, is the weakest one out of all of them. Out of all the losses.
Probably should have locked that one up at home.
I would have said yes. You probably should have beat Minnesota at home. Minnesota's 15-5 on this season, and they're 3-4 in the conference. Not good in the conference, but I would have said of all the losses, that's the worst one. But the other 3, good losses.
See, to me, it's the Minnesota one. To me, is kind of, like it's one of those things where it's like I don't know if that's the one I look at. I think the Michigan State one is the one I look at because this isn't the same Michigan State team that we've seen in years past. At the time, Northwestern, I believe, they had 3 losses. They were 12-3 at that time, I believe. 10-5 after that game was Michigan State. And that was Michigan State's. They were 2-0 in the conference after needing overtime to beat that Minnesota team that beat Northwestern. So for me, that's the one I look at where it's like 9 points to a Michigan State team. But the thing about Michigan State, and this is the big debate, and it comes into where this loss stands for you, is this Michigan State team weaker than we've seen in the past, or did Coach Izzo load his non-conference schedule up so much to where he even had to apologize to the team and said, I'm sorry for the non-conference schedule I threw at you guys because they were losing a lot more games than we're used to. And you could be sitting there going, Ricky, it's only 5 losses. What are you talking about? But that's a lot when it comes to a Michigan State team. And I want to put this out there. I'm not saying that Northwestern, catastrophic loss, shouldn't make the tournament because they lost to Michigan State. I'm just saying that's the loss I look at and go, it's not the strongest. It's the weakest to me out of the other ones. But the thing they're in a good set for and what we've talked about, they control their own destiny. And that's where you want to be at this point in the season. Yes, they have a lot more home games. The road games are manageable. Plus 2 of them are against ranked opponents. So I think that if they keep it close, and let's say they lose 70-66, I'm just throwing out that score because it's a close 4-point loss. They lose by 4 to Purdue or like 2 or 4 to Wisconsin. I don't care if it's on the road. Oh, you played them close. They were a ranked team. I'm not going to penalize you too much for that. For me, it comes down to the non-ranked teams. Nebraska, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. What are you going to do? Rutgers, another one that they're playing that's unranked. What do you do against those guys? Do you finish out the games you're supposed to win? And then what ranked opponents do you beat in this final schedule? But before we kind of wrap up everything, is there any final thoughts that you have about the Wildcats and the tournament? Where do you think they're going to be? How high of a seed do you think they can get? Any final thoughts on the Wildcats.
Northwestern 5-2 in the conference. They're just a half a game back of the Big Ten division lead, conference lead, I should say. And this team right now, the word for them is consistency. They're going to have to continue to be consistent throughout the rest of this season. And I mean, they're an 8 seed right now. If they can be good, if they can be consistent, I could see them jumping to about a 6.
Well, and the big thing with the Big Ten, we mentioned this with Arizona, I'm going to throw it out there, with Northwestern, a key thing for them is to, because I'm trying to think in my head exactly how it goes. I want to say they have to get a top 4 spot in the Big Ten, because if you're unfamiliar how the Big Ten does their conference tournament, if you're seeded 1 through 4, you virtually don't have to play the first 2 days of the tournament. You get a 2-day bye, and then you get to play, where they have a few games that first day, then teams that get that first 1-day bye. I think it's 2 games the first day, then 4 games, then boom, you're right there with another 4 games. So if they can at least, the Purdue, Wisconsin, and Maryland, if they can keep in that stretch and stay in the top 4, having that 2-day bye and then saying, you know what, we only need 3 wins to go to the 2 wins to go to the Big Ten title game, and then 3 to win the conference tournament, that would just be an easier road to doing that for Northwestern. But before I wrap everything up, Swanee, it's what we get to every week. What are your final thoughts?
Well, final thoughts. We'll take it back to football again. The Green Bay Packers lost. We're all happy about it.
Well, you told the listeners that would happen.
No, I did tell them that would happen, because eventually the Packers' luck runs out. Because like I said before, they're not good. They're lucky and opportunistic. But the final thought that I have, we now know who the Super Bowl is going to be. The Super Bowl is going to be a great Super Bowl, I think, with New England and with Atlanta. I'll just tell you right now, I think Atlanta's too good. They got too much offensive firepower. Atlanta is going to be the Super Bowl winner. Atlanta Falcons.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think about any of the topics that we talked about today on the podcast. And Northwestern fans, let us know what you think. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know what you think down below in the comment section. Go ahead, follow us on Twitter at young_swan19, at Ricky Widmer, at Most Valuable Pod for the whole kit and caboodle. Also, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. We're trying to go to VidCon, guys, make this content better for you guys. So check out the Patreon page. Help MVP go to VidCon. I want to thank you guys again for checking out the podcast today. We'll see you guys tomorrow, but as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.